cast your mind back to yesterday. Of course, it was indeed the budget. Many people's eyebrows were raised, though, by the opening statement of the Chancellor. Let's remind ourselves about what that was about.
As we mourn the tragic loss of life in Israel and Gaza, the Prime Minister reminded us last week of the need to fight extremism and heal divisions. So I start today by remembering the Muslims who died in 2 world wars in the service of freedom and democracy. We need a memorial to honour them. I've decided to allocate £1 million towards the cost of building one. Whatever your faith or colour or class, this country will never forget the sacrifices made for our future.
Well, our political editor, Christopher Hope, today interviewed the Chancellor of the Exchequer and asked him about a variety of things, but of course touched on the opening sentiment. Let's have a listen.
I think it is important to recognise the contribution of 170,000 Muslims who died defending our freedoms. We have already, as a government, supported a memorial to Sikh soldiers who died. We supported a memorial to Black and African soldiers who died in Windrush Square in Brixton, and a very good proposal. I also, by the way, remembered the sufferings and worries of people of the Jewish faith in my autumn statement. So a very good proposal was made to me by Sajid Javid, who is a colleague and a friend, and I decided that had merit.
I've got to tell you as well, there's been a big reaction to that announcement. You know, very different opinions and quite strong opinions on both sides. I'm pleased now to be joined down the line by Naveed Asghar, the Deputy Chair of the Conservative Muslim Forum. Good evening to you. What does this memorial mean to you?
Good evening, Michelle. I think it's very important, and as the Chancellor has said, I don't want to repeat what he said, I think it goes a long way in healing the rifts that have been caused recently with the war in the Middle East. We've seen hundreds of thousands of people marching in towns and cities across the UK, and I think it is really important that, you know, the Chancellor has shown that the 4 million population Muslims in the UK are valued members of society, and, you know, that the Chancellor, the government is there to represent and protect everybody. And there's been a memorial has been in the pipeline for a long time. A lot of work has went on in the background. So it's been announced, and, you know, the community is really, really happy that this is finally taking place. And, you know, I mean, I know a lot of people, I've seen a lot of comments on it in regards to, you know, the £1 million could have been used elsewhere. But you think about the government spending £1 million in the grand scale of things is not a vast amount of money for something that will, you know, go a long way to heal the rifts within the Muslim community at the moment.
Yeah, and let me ask you, because I must confess, Naveed, I personally thought it was very odd, to say the least, that here we are, we've got a very important announcement all about specifically about the finances of the nation, how people at home, how their back pockets are going to look in the year ahead, what's going to be more expensive, what's hopefully going to be cheaper, etc. I found it utterly bizarre that to start that process with talk about a memorial, irrespective of who the memorial is and for and all the rest of it, was irrelevant. It's the notion that that was the first priority of the Chancellor. What did you make to that?
That I can't give you an answer on. You know,
no, I'm asking you what you thought of it being priority number one at the top of the financial budget.
That's right. So here's the thing. I didn't think that's what the opening statement would be. I had some inclination that it was going to be part of the budget somewhere along the line, and because it was such a small amount of money compared to the 20 billion worth of savings since the autumn budget, and now that they're putting in for national insurance and cuts, you know, for self-employed, VAT thresholds for small businesses, reform on the tax system and vapes, etc. You know, that's where we were really focused. So this was not something that I thought was going to be anywhere near the start. I thought it might have been discussed as a, you know, as a closing shot or something like that, I'll be honest.
Yeah, and let me ask you a question, because I feel a little bit, and I worry a little bit actually, Naveed, whether or not the Muslim vote is essentially being weaponised, politicised, that people are now using this vote in order to gain political advantage. Do you feel that way or not?
Absolutely, and I'm really against that. And, you know, it definitely should not be the case, because we're just hardworking people. You know, a majority of Muslims in this country are moderate, hardworking people who pay into the tax system. And, you know, they came here, second, third, fourth generation. My grandparents came here in 1950. And, you know, here we are based in Scotland and Glasgow. You know, we're third, fourth generation. My kids are now adults. And, you know, we're going to be here for the, you know, eternity, essentially. So we're a part of society, and the protection of the UK, the well-being of the UK is my priority, just like yourself. But, you know, I want to make sure my kids have got a good education, they've got good jobs, I've got low interest rates, cost of living crisis is affecting everybody. All these things are dealt with. We don't want to be just labelled or targeted for our faith or our religion, and I don't think any faith community wants that to be the case. I think we need to get on and get past this. This is something that you used to see in, maybe 100 years ago or something when immigrants first started arriving. I don't think that should be the case now in this day and age. I mean, going back to the War Memorial, it's a fantastic thing. 170,000 Muslims died and 3.5 million people from the Indian subcontinent came to fight. Without those bodies, those able-bodied men fighting World War I and World War II, the chances of the wars being won by the Allied forces were going to be very slim. These people came in and actually made a fantastic contribution, and this is why we have the freedoms we have today. I think it's absolutely right that they had to be valued.
I completely agree with everything that you've just said there. This notion, though, of creating separate memorials based on whether it's faith or whatever, do you think that that is more unifying? Because, of course, we already have, don't we, war memorials and memorials that already commemorate all of the dead. You've got, for example, the cenotaph, you've got the memorial gates near Hyde Park, for example,
the problem with that is that there hasn't been any mention, really, of any notable mention of all the Allied forces in those countries that did support. Now, you'd understand if it was just a small amount, but 3.5 million soldiers over 2 world wars is a phenomenal contribution, and it's never really sort of brought upon, and that's why faith communities want to ensure that their great-great-grandparents, their sort of, family members, etc., are commemorated in this kind of way, and then for people to go and, pray and, have a peaceful time there at these places. So this one is going to be made, it's going to be, £1 million spent. It's like a fantastic proposal, and I think it is important that, it's no different than having places of worship for each religion, etc. People want to have their own safe space to go and, to mourn their loved ones and lost ones.
And, yesterday, Jeremy Hunt, he brought up the connection. He was saying, on the one hand, he was talking about extremism. Then he was talking about, therefore, the need for this memorial. What do you feel about, on the one hand, because I completely agree with everything that you're saying, by the way, you absolutely should acknowledge and value anyone that's lost their life.
Many people ask me that, as being Deputy Chair of the Conservative Muslim Forum. Many people have these conversations with me, and I repeatedly say the same thing. There is no room in this country for extremists, regardless of which culture, which religion, which country they come from. And it's no different to even left-wing extremists, right-wing extremists, or religious extremists. We want Britain as a country which is welcoming and open to everybody. Everybody who's here should be here legally, and I want to make sure that my children are safe, I am safe, and everybody in my society is safe.
But why is Jeremy Hunt connecting extremism with this memorial?
I don't think he was connecting it with this memorial. I think it's a separate conversation. It's not connected to this memorial. The memorial is a standalone thing that, Sajid Javid and his organisation had, where he's connected with, had a fantastic proposal. And there's several proposals like this up and down the country, actually. But that is the key one that they've decided to fund.
Thank you ever so much for that insight.